from the Naval Academy that I tried to get in the Marine Corps, but my parents were married. So some years later, my son Jim joins the Marine Corps, and I'm very proud of his service in the Marine Corps, and comes home and says, "Dad, you know, the Marines are part of the Navy department, the men's department." So the friendly rivalry and exchanges of views goes on.
We'll be happy to know that Zach Cates, of course, which you were instrumental in getting the Secretary of the Navy to overturn that waiver, is going to flight school at Pensacola, 0700 hours, December 4.
Well, we're proud of him, and I'm glad we were able to help. And I'm sorry that occasionally these things have to rise to the level of your and my attention. But that's also one of the reasons why we have a responsibility as well as a privilege. And if you hadn't brought it to my attention, Zach would probably not be doing that. And so
that's what
your and my job are all about. So I thank you.
But it's a strong lesson too. To people with cancer, people who had cancer, which was the fundamental foundation and mantra of the Imus Cattle Ranch for Kids with Cancer, and that is not to be defined by your disease, and don't let anybody tell you can't do something. And Zach had cancer when he was 9 years old, but he doesn't have cancer now, so they see cancer on his paperwork and say, well, you can't do this. Well, yeah, you can do it. So.
Well, I'm glad we were able to fix it. And by the way, I also am a melanoma survivor many years ago, and I think that obviously thank God, a lot of us recover and are able to go on with our lives. And Zach should not have ever had to go through what he went through, but that's what we're all about. And again, one of the greatest buglers in the history of the United States Marine Corps was one Don Imus, my friend.
Yeah, see, but I tell the story, like I was telling a bunch of cowboys the other day, about the time I was in the jungles of Vietnam killing the Kong, and Wyatt happened to be sitting there, and unfortunately looked at me and said, no, you didn't, Dad. You played the bugle at Camp Pendleton. I said, well, whatever. So, what was that? So, tell me about 13 Soldiers.
Right. Mark Salter and I, my beloved friend, and I put together a book about 13 soldiers and each major conflict we were in, men and women and others men and women, African American and others that fought in different individual stories of the conflicts that they were in, ranging from a guy named Joseph Martin who joined the Revolutionary War at 15 and went through incredible experiences, to Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., who was an idealist when the Civil War took him into battle, and obviously he became one of our great journalists later on, and to other people Charles Black, who was an African American. He fought in the War of 1812. Pete Salter, who fought a hand-to-hand fight in Korea. A beloved friend of mine named Leo Thorsness, who also ended up in prison with me, who fought one of the great battles, air battles of the Vietnam War. He fought off MiG, SAMs, anti-aircraft fire, all to protect a downed American air crew. And Monica Lynn Brown, who was a frontline medic in Afghanistan. She risked her life to save others, which, by the way, should put to rest any of this controversy about women serving in combat roles. As long as they meet the standards, in my view, they're fully qualified.
Is there any person, maybe not even in this book, but is there any person who stands out in the history of our country as the greatest warrior ever?
I think it depends on the criteria you use, but I think there's very little doubt that pops to mind Dwight David Eisenhower, as far as his genius that was so important in World War II to Grant. I'm sure some of our Southern listeners wouldn't agree with that, but the war, the Civil War, was really stumbling around back and forth and without much result because of poor generals. And Grant, there was Lincoln found Ulysses Grant, and that was pivotal in